Okay.
Is that what the highway work? Get contracts. I don't know
I thought you guys were all standing
It's just a reception line. You're gonna talk, right?
No.
Yeah.
We went as married, and my ex-husband has a cabin at Lake Reception. So
You know what bitches are?
my favorite.
Oh, yeah. All the food there. And it was there when I drove into town. And then when I was looking back, looking over there, and it's all freshly cut. You're not
State parks.
I love that. I did too. I mean,
That's when I got it.
Did you hear what
I'm trying to get my wife to take out some of
We're gonna do that, our offer's $2, so.
So now they're different.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Oh, Lance, good morning. Good morning to you. I'm doing well. How's yourself?
Good.
I wear shorts every day.
Yeah.
365.
Oh, you was?
Yeah. Work there. Well, I've got 9:30. And I'll call this meeting to order. This is our monthly business meeting, and if you follow me in the, join me on the pledge of allegiance, we'll get this one moving. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, I don't believe we have any guests here today, so we'll go on to the next item.
I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Handel to approve the agenda as presented, seconded by Mr. Allen. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? And it carries unanimously. And
I'll also move approval of the consent agenda.
very good. Okay, Mr. Handel also motion to approve the consent agenda, second by Ms. Henderson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. We'll go into the next item here for our public input and comments. Do we have any public input and comments? Anything that's not on the agenda you can address. You have 3 minutes. Identify yourself, and things that are on the agenda, you'll have an opportunity to speak to those. Gail.
Gail Taco Kirk. I want to start off on a positive note. It was fantastic this morning being able to get off the bus right across the street instead of getting off at the gravel pit down there and having to walk on the side of the highway and through the brush. So that's pretty awesome.
Thank you. Just another one of those positive things we're trying to work in that area, in that realm of, and thanks for the DOT people out there too for the cooperation.
I left early today because I wasn't sure if it were done or not.
Me
It
too.
was so much fun to just sail right through. Thought I'm not going to be late today.
Any other public comments? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Thank you. Public comment period is closed. We go on to our agenda item number 1, discussion with possible action on resolution. Excuse me. No, I'm always kind of jumping through this.
Just because he's going over.
Excuse me, Mr. Martier.
I won't take it to the offense you're trying to. All right, I'll give you a quick update for 2017 budget. Certainly the Finance Committee has reviewed the initial draft of the budget. We'll continue to refine that and update the discussion. Our recent discussions with the union have helped that as well. They've given us the first wage proposal, so we'll be able to, certainly in the next work session in September, we'll be able to offer the first draft of the budget to the board. So. Labor negotiations, we've had contract negotiations with ATU 1576 on the 2nd, the 19th, and yesterday the 25th. We've got 2 more scheduled in September for the 8th and the 13th, and one scheduled in October for the 18th right now. And I'll provide an update on those sessions in the closed session today. Press coverage, we've had a couple of recent articles, and those are the result of briefing at the Langley City Council. And then a separate meeting I had with Ms. Stensland from Whitby News Times. So Island Transit had 2 articles, one in the South Whitby Record and one in Whitby News Times this month. Matter of fact, we'll pass those around for your review. I think you've got them up there actually. There's a number of items in that folder, everything, public feedback from the transit development plan, some other public feedback, a letter from WashDOT on the review that was done, as well as press clippings in there. So I just encourage y'all to just take a look at those and we can get an opportunity this morning. In general, I think the articles were fair and good articles, and we've also seen some interest from the public as those articles and the discussions of reviewing our services and proposing changes this fall into 2017. So I think that's been good and effective. We'll try and keep that moving forward. Island Transit in the city of Oak Harbor have also been discussing, you brought up last month, the Flintstone Park agreement. We did not hold a copy of that agreement, so it was good the city's provided that, and I think we're waiting at this point. The city's in the midst of their biennium budget. They've discussed getting back to us with a proposal, and I expect to do that during the week. So we'll sit down with them and talk about the future of that. We did have information systems cybersecurity review, and that was really a WISTIP effort, the Washington State Transportation Insurance Pool. They coordinated with Davis Ray Tremaine Law Firm, and they specialize in cybersecurity development and review best practices for the industry. We've met with them a couple of times. We are waiting, I think, for one final session, and then they'll give us some feedback. So I don't have a time or a time frame yet when we expect that. Probably in the next month or so. It's been a good review, though. It's certainly we expect some actions coming out of that to help us formulate some IT plans moving forward on what's important prior to the address for cybersecurity. Grant programs. WashDOT's consolidated grant program was supposed to be available for the transit agencies on the 10th of August. It is still not been released. We're moving ahead with building proposals for grants anyway. We're not going to certainly wait for them to do that. We expect they will still be due October 14th. So we've got roughly a little over a month to work on those. They did release the Regional Mobility Grant Program and application, so those are programs that will start to work. That one is due to be submitted to Washington State at the end of September. So those are things we'll also discuss next month in the workshop as well on grant proposals. WashDOT is also doing a regional transportation data call. I previously talked about that. We've provided initial data. The intent of that study is to look at transportation or transit operations that exceed the boundaries of a public transportation benefit area. So in our particular case, you're talking about tri-counties or anything that would go outside of our area. So we've provided that data. We have a couple of opportunities next month, potentially at the WashDOT and Washington State Transportation Association conference to get some feedback on that or how that study is progressing. In any event, it's supposed to be released to the legislature in November, so we'll have some feedback on that. We also may hear something at the farmhouse game on the 9th of September as well. Just WashDOT there, so if I get any updates on that, I'll let you know. State Road 20 realignment. You've seen a lot of the work out here, and as you talked about this morning, much of that construction has been completed. We still have striping yet to do. The detours that we put in place helped mitigate most of the impacts. However, at the peak of construction, we were still seeing some impacts. Occasionally delays as much as about 40 minutes on some of our bus runs. Both the Route 1 in particular, and then also some of our paratransit operations. That's largely complete. We canceled the detour yesterday, as a matter of fact, so we're back to normal operations for all the routes. And we don't expect to see any significant delays. They still have yet to come back and do the striping to complete the final aspects of the road work. We're also still working with the county and Carletti Architects on the plans for the access to the back. So we have not yet reached a point where we can build big packages to out the public. So we're still working to resolve those with the county. As a reminder, the initial estimate from Carletti was approximately $70,000 for that work. So we have a grant a little over $200,000 from Washington State Department of Transportation for that project, and we hope to get some conclusion from the county here in the near future, so we can go out to seek bids and get that work done this fall. Speaking of other work, Harbor Station, Kingsman Company has been doing repairs and paint work up there. They've completed 1 of 3 of the bus shelters. I don't have a completion date at this point, but I anticipate that it's going to be at least a couple of weeks, particularly with the Labor Day holiday going on. They still have the other 2 bus shelters to complete. A couple of dates that are coming up. On the 6th of September, there's going to be a Lions House community meeting. We'll make sure we attend that. Certainly we have interest with them across the street, and a lot of our folks anticipate and currently use transit services. So we'll attend that meeting. The 9th of September is a farmhouse gang meeting in Skagit. We've also got a board workshop meeting on the 12th. There's a conference, there's a training session that the finance officer and myself will attend on the 14th and 15th in Everett. And then there's a conference for, as I mentioned earlier, for Washington State Transportation Association and the Department of Transportation, the 17th and the 21st. Our board meeting is on the 23rd. And then there's also a WISTIP board meeting at the very end of the month. Any questions, go ahead first.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
I have a question about our insurance policy just in general. Does it covers all of our capital, including buses? So like what happened down in Puyallup where their buses burned up? Our insurance doesn't have exclusions like that.
Yeah, we have deductibles certainly, but not exclusions.
Any other questions? And we'll move on to the financial analyst report.
So good morning. This is a financial report for the month ending July 2016. First of all, just to review our cash summary. This is part of the handouts that I provided, and also is on our website. This is our cash summary report. First interesting item is our sales tax revenue, highlighted there. For July, we were experiencing increase over our budget of about $105,000, and that's a really positive note. You can see the pink line there shows where we've been since January of 2016, and we've been exceeding our budget each month. This month being a little higher than normal. So $571,000 approximately, or 7.23% ahead of budget for 2016, even if the remaining 5 months are the same as budget, or 12.39% ahead of budget for the first 7 months of 16. So we've had some really positive tax numbers here in 16.
Can you go back to
Sure.
that for just a minute? Is that, in your opinion, an anomaly because of the large construction projects that we've had in the area that are subject to tax? So,
I think this year is probably unusual for that reason. We've had an influx of people on the North Island, and so that definitely has tightened the construction market and New construction has happened this year, perhaps a little bit last year. So that, in a way, it is a bit of an anomaly.
And I think that's our concern moving forward is what we can't really tell looking at sales tax is what portion of that is really coming from a construction-related project
Right.
versus, the general boom in the economy at the time. So we're trying to plan conservatively in the future to make sure that we don't plan for something that won't be there with the construction ending in the next couple of years.
Thanks, I like the response, thanks.
A couple other items here that are of note, our contract revenue in the orange and capital grant source of cash in the yellow. Operating grant contracts, we have the Everett connector, so we're receiving a little bit more money there than we did because we're at full swing now for the first time, first month. And then, of course, we have our other operating grants, Perry Equalization, Tri-County Connector, in those two amounts listed. And then we're also seeing capital reimbursements this month for the 12 vans. We had a 95% reimbursement rate on that. Parker Road, 100%, radio repeaters, 86.5%, just small amounts. But we are, we saw a huge influx of cash for that reason. So as a result, a big boost to our cash position. On the use of cash operations, we just had a lot lower non-payroll expenses than our average, about 150, almost 160,000. So that was another positive, and it brought our cash balance to almost $4.4 million. And again, we're saving that money, putting in reserves for various purposes. One highlight is our operating or emergency reserve is now at about $1 million. So we were mandated by the board to put about 2 months away, and we're approaching that figure, which will be about 1.5 million at some point in the near future. We'll probably see that next year, where we want to be. And then our operating cash, we want to maintain at least 1 month's operating reserve, and we're above that right now. One thing I can say though is that we haven't really fulfilled a lot of our grants, and we're going to need to spend some of this cash in order to fulfill those bus purchases and some other grants that we have outstanding still.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Do you have a projection on what that amount's going to be relative to the $1 million that you have right now?
I think that we're going to spend somewhere slightly over $500,000 on our match of these grants that we have on the table. I think we have radio repeaters, route match, security cameras, and then 13 buses.
So this time next year, we won't have a full 2 months of operating reserve?
I think we still will. I mean, we're slowly building our cash position. I'm not worried about that at all. In fact, I think we'll be meeting, I think by the end of this year, we'll be meeting our 2-month emergency operating reserve. Also have our 1 month of regular reserve fulfilled, and we'll be building for future bus and vehicle purchases.
But the bus payout won't come out of the operating reserve.
That's what I was
It
going to say. It's going to come out of the appropriate reserve for buses. And we'll
That's
have, right now, we have $800,000 in our bus reserve. That's separate from the $1 million in the operating reserve.
So we're going to spend the 813 plus some out of the operating reserve?
Only to cover those that would not be covered by the reserves for the bus van or something like that. So in general, we should not be depleting the operating reserve to submit for our matches for the grants.
I was under the impression that we were building up that operating reserve and we weren't touching that operating reserve.
Right, that's not our, we've got
Right.
cash sitting there, so.
And that those other things are coming out of the operating cash, which is why that's so big right now.
Right.
And then it's where we've set aside some reserves for matches.
We don't have any intent to touch the operating reserve.
That's true. And it's outlined that way in the budget and TDP. where we're putting away that money in reserve in advance of purchases. So this is how it looks graphically, our reserve balances. You can see our general cash has increased a little bit, and then our other reserves are slowly increasing. July budget actual information. On the revenue side, of course, local sales tax we've already talked about. We're a little bit ahead there. Our target or goal is about 58%. We're at 61% fulfilled for the year. State operating grants at 73%. The reason behind that is some of our cash or revenue streams were delayed in 15, came in 16, so we're ahead for that reason. But otherwise, we're right on schedule with our operating grant revenues. On the expense side, in total, you can see I highlighted where we are in relation to the goal of 58%, we're at 45%. It's mostly due to that under-fulfilled capital expenses that we're planning to make happen as soon as we can. So you can see it's at 19.84%. That's it. If there's any questions, feel free to.
Any questions from the board?
I just had a couple of comments. I was just noticing in the ridership and such, that our ridership year to date is down over 88,000 people. We're going to look at that and look at making adjustments or whatever, but we're not here or anything. Or
Well, it's certainly part of our ongoing review for ridership in general. So we're looking at all the routes across the state. Some of it is speculation is attributed to the cost of gas, and that the ridership for all transit services really across the state and across the nation is down about 1% or 2%.
About how much?
About 1 to 2%.
yeah, for us, that's 15%. 88,000 is 15% of what we did last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we are looking at all the routes. So whether or not we put changes in place by the end of the year, I think that really revolves around, we're talking about more holistic look at all of our route structure to include, potential alternatives as well. Look, as we've talked about, a number of folks in the community asked about potentials for Saturday service, and then how do we support the tri-counties if in fact the state isn't going to be able to support us. So
Yeah.
I think we need to tie all that together versus just looking at reductions in services based on ridership.
Yeah.
What's our cost per rider overall?
I think what we have on our operating report is cost per ride instead of cost per rider. But basically, we collect that data every time somebody gets on the bus. So we get to the...
My numbers came up around $13
Fixed
per ride,
routes? Fixed routes or?
on all of them combined.
That gets somewhat skewed though, because there's a
Right,
higher
it's
cost for
there's-
paratransit versus
Mhm.
fixed.
Yeah, car
local.
transit is expensive. I was just looking at things.
On the operating report, I would just direct your attention to the list that cost per ride for the various, Camino, Para, fixed TV, vehicle, and it breaks out fixed separately. So, depends on the type of service.
What's the difference between cost per ride and cost per rider?
Well, there could be confusion, like, for example, if I was riding the bus and I take a trip to Oak Harbor, a round trip would be 2 trips. Getting on once, say in South Whitby, getting on again in Oak Harbor. So cost per ride might be double that than the cost for just taking me from South Whitby to Oak Harbor. So cost per ride is every time you get on that bus. Cost per rider might be cost for me for the entire day. So we keep statistics around every time someone gets on that bus.
Cool. The other thing I just wanted to address, I was just And I just wanted to point out that it was in your, I don't have it here, but in your cash reserve draft, if you bump back to that. I just mean we're being filmed and the public gets to see this. I just wanted to point it out. If you take a notice of that graph, and you look at the numbers, prior to the assembly of this group, there was no reserve. And look at its growth in the last year. That's all I was.
Again, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of great work that's been done, certainly on cost savings. I think there's three factors that have led to that. One is the efforts of the board and the organization over the last year and a half to reduce those costs. But we are benefiting from an economy that's better than expected, and gas prices are lower than expected.
I like the fact that you're planning very conservatively for the next year, simply because it is an election year. God knows what's going to happen after November.
Look, we're elected officials. We're going to take credit for all the
Yes.
good stuff we don't control. And the bad stuff, we're going to point our fingers right back at you.
I just wanted to point it out because, well, no, because the board takes some heated times. And I just wanted to point out the fact that if you look at the graph.
I want to comment on the
Speaks.
ridership that
Speaks
you
volume.
finished, Rick?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. I do a kind of a ride-by survey and have for a long time. If I'm out riding my bike, going from Oak Harbor down to Keystone and back and around, and often I will see people standing at various pickup points for on transit. And I'll stop and talk to them. They don't know who I am. I just ask them what they know about the current plans or plans where they're already charging for the service from Camino to Everett, and what their thoughts are about fees for rides in this area. And pretty much overwhelmingly, people say, well, we don't really mind paying $2. It seems reasonable, and I don't give them any lead-in either. What they also tag with that is we would like to see Saturday service, and I think our ridership would probably pick up quite a bit if we have Saturday service. And I will even hear that from people who aren't even at the bus station, but in conversation with the community from time to time. So I sense that there isn't a big pushback on a reasonable ridership fee as long as it's consistent with Skagit and Whatcom and community transit. I think the real interest is having Saturday service.
That's true.
That's been different from my experience. I mean, so when I've gone to those community meetings, all I've received is pushback about fares. So I just want, that's been my experience, is that those meetings, they have not gone smoothly the minute the topic comes up. Doesn't mean I'm against it, it just means I don't want to give the impression that that's been your
And I
experience,
think
mine's different.
as we plan, as we look at the routes and the ridership that we have right now and look at changes or recommendations for changes for that, the plan would be to present that to the public here in the next couple of months, seek their feedback, and then also be able to tie in, as you talk about fares, what does a fare do? So we'll be able to tie that in, get some feedback from the public. We're talking about a number of public engagements as well as surveys. So I think we'll get some better data to be able to quantify, that a little better.
Yeah. Well, and also, I just like when I did, what people say at meetings and what becomes reality is not always similar, because at all the meetings we had on Camino, I heard overwhelmingly dozens and dozens of people about, oh, we want the Everett connector, oh, we want the Everett connector, oh, we want the Everett connector. And if I look at the numbers and I do the math real quickly, and it looks like we're serving 13 people per day on the Everett connector. So that's not sufficient to maintain that service. And it needs to pick up significantly by the end of the year before it gets anyone's report for me. For the record.
And I know my ride-by surveys are not scientific or exact. What I like about it is they don't know who I am. It's a spontaneous response, which I'm more interested in than I'm interested in a public meeting also, but often at public meetings, there are agendas why people come to the meeting, and then there's also peer pressure about the message that they want to deliver. And in a random kind of an open, no pressure question type of atmosphere, I like that response. That's the only reason I asked that question, and because I am curious of what the general public thinks about
Well, you know,
different services
Yeah.
and fees and so.
if I'm standing on the side of the road waiting on a ride, I'd probably wait a $5 bill, so.
Anyway, let's move this along. Any further questions on the finance side? Now, we can go to agenda item number 1. Discussions with possible actions on resolution 12-16 regarding Island Transit 6-year transit development plan for 2016 to 2021.
So the transit development plan was released on August 5th to the public and followed up by a public hearing at the board workshop meeting on the 8th. We also held additional public meetings here at Coopville on the 8th in the evening on the 8th, and also at Camino in the multipurpose room in the evening August 11th as well. We received a number of comments via email in addition. In your board package, you should have a summary. There's been a total of about 11 comments. Some of those have been included in the draft. Actually, one of those comments at the public hearing from Ms. Gale was incorporated, and that clarified our ADA language, so that was helpful. A number of the other comments, as you look at them, a lot of them address concerns for maintaining or expanding services and implementation affairs. Well, many of these were outside the scope of the TDP. We'll certainly keep those comments because I think they'll be useful as we go into the budgetary process for 2017 and certainly also on the ridership and rides. Yesterday in our discussions with the union, actually in union negotiations, we did discover one error that was in the second draft. Really, that's in section 8. We had looked at, you have a revised copy for section 8. Section 8 has the ridership numbers, hours, miles, etc. And we had made a mistake in the 2016 and beyond. That did not affect the rest of the transit development plan, and that it was not tied to budgetary figures or fiscal numbers. But we had artificially lowered the numbers for ridership, for hours and miles from 2016 on. So that was corrected, and we just provided an addendum to correct that this morning. So in general, that summarizes much of the comment that we've gotten. This is, again, the assumptions that go into the transit development plan for the future are relying on the fiscal resources that we have that are sustainable. And those include our sales tax projections, paratransit, and equalization. They do not include the Tri-County at this time because we don't have any certainty on what those look like. We'll certainly apply for those via grants, but without the assurance, we're not going to put those in the transit development plan and predict or paint a future that we don't have the resources to support. So with those comments, pending any questions, I'd recommend approval of the resolution to adopt the transit development plan.
I would move to approve resolution.
We have public comments on this.
No, we
No,
don't
we've
get
had
public
many.
comment period. That's not great.
Yeah, okay, so I move to approve resolution number 12-16 for the Board of Directors of the Island County Public Transportation Benefit Area Corporation approving the Island Transit 6-year transit development plan 2016 through 2021.
Second.
I'll second.
All right, motions are made by Ms. Henderson to approve resolution 12-16, seconded by Mr. Allen. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. We'll move on to agenda item number 2, discussion with possible action on resolution number 13-16.
So this item, for the board, this item is largely administrative nature in that we currently are a member of the Island Transportation Planning Organization. It is not a regional transportation planning organization. As a result of the law that was revised last year by Representative Hayes, We are not eligible to become a regional transportation planning organization. So the ITPO, as it exists today, will disband here in the near future, and the regional transportation planning organization will stand up in its place. So largely it's administrative in nature in that we are dissolving one organization and becoming part of the other. And that is certainly consistent with what we had in the past with the Skagit Island Transit Planning Organization. Now it's just going to be an Island County Transportation Planning Organization. We've had the ILA agreement reviewed by legal for both Island County. Matt has reviewed it on our part. We're in concurrence with the ILA, and my recommendation would be that we approve that ILA and then approve membership in the new RTP.
And on this item, we've also had public meetings on this presentation. Do you need any public comments on this one either? I don't think.
No.
So at this time, I'll entertain first of all, any questions from the board, Mr. Mortier? Hearing none, then I'd entertain a motion.
I move approval of resolution 13-16.
Second.
All right, motion is made by Ms. Johnson to approve resolution 13-16, approved by Ms. Henderson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Agenda number 3, discussion with possible action on resolution 14-16 regarding the final acceptance of the project closeout for the Island Transit main base facility project.
Something that's been in work for a number of years at this point. So the State of Good Repair final acceptance, in your board packet you have a checklist. That checklist is derived from guidance from MRSC. And that checklist has the items that are required to approve completion of all contract work. That's what we're talking about, is completion of contract work for this facility. Following the project completion letter on June 6th from Waterleaf, architects reviewed required documentation to support the bond retainage release for Tiger. This is not monies that we hold. This is monies that were held for the bond that Tiger took out as a result of the project. The Department of Revenue, Employment Security Department, and Department of Labor Industries documents accompany your board packet, and those are required prior to release of the bond retainage. We also have prevailing wage statements for Tiger and subcontractors that are available in a series of binders that if you care to review those are available in the records room as well. This is largely administrative in that we have completed, the architect has concluded that the contract work has been completed. And at this point, all we're doing is accepting the project. We still have warranties that cover the facility. That is outside of the process for accepting the completion of the project. And then we will also generate a letter for Tiger that will allow them to then release the bond retainage. So I would recommend that we approve the resolution to close out and accept the final project.
Thank you.
Move approval of resolution number 14.
Moment, please. Any questions for Mr. Mortier regarding this? I have a couple of comments regarding this. First of all, I want to thank you and the staff for getting this put together. There are a lot of loose ends hanging on this thing for a long time, unnecessary long time. And also for clarification for the record, this does not waive any warranty obligations as a result of the contract. And as you can see, there's a number of steps that had to be covered in here that I think were just kind of glossed over before without recognizing that we had to take steps. Any other comments? In that case, I'll entertain the motion to accept the resolution.
So moved.
I'll second. Okay, Mr. Hanold made a motion to accept resolution 14-16, second by Mr. Allen. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
So I like to make the motions and then have the discussion.
Yeah,
So,
Well, the reason I ask if there are any questions for
yeah,
the motion,
I understand.
okay?
so we can get an answer.
So now
before
we have a motion, we have a second. Are there, all those in favor say aye?
I think we have a comment down here, a question.
Okay.
Before I give my approval vote, I just wanted to take a moment to make sure that we recognized Rick Omberg for the extra work that he put in as a board member. I think that, you know, one of the expectations of being on this particular board are much higher expectations, and there's much more hands-on involvement than probably any other board that we're assigned to in our official capacities. And we were fortunate to have him with his construction expertise be able to walk through this, you know, with Mike and all the staff. But there was nobody else on this board who would have been capable of digging into those details and understanding what they meant the same way that you did. And I want to say thank you, and I also want the community to understand what a gift that was, because we just simply would not have seen the things that you saw. So that was my comment, is I just wanted to thank you and then call it out, because it was a significant investment of your time and skills.
I agree.
Thank you. I think what I'm most pleased with about the outcome is we didn't have to deal with the attorneys.
No, that's,
Man's grateful.
No, that's
Yeah,
waste of funds.
it was, Tiger was very professional and good to work with without compromising their position, and the staff really supported this effort to close it out. And so now we can move on. Okay? Thank you, Joe. All right.
Well, we haven't voted on it yet.
We haven't voted on it, so now I'm waiting for, we have a motion, we have a second. And so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. We have accepted.
You see, we're not passing up any chance while we're on film here to give an attaboy to somebody on the board.
I would have given it camera or not.
Item number 4, discussion with possible action regarding the bus pass sales agreement between Island Transit and Everett Transit.
So I think this is a good news piece, and you know, Ricky talked to ridership for the 412.
Yeah.
So it's taken us longer than frankly, a little bit longer than I expected, but we finally reached an agreement, again, legal on both sides to review this, and it's just an agreement between us and Everett Transit in order for us to be able to offer the monthly bus passes for sale at every station. The one note, just to reference this, is their part of this will be, they'll charge 5% for the handling of that, so it comes out to $4 out of this $80 bus pass that Everett Transit will retain in order to be able to sell those. It still offers a significant convenience for folks that would be in the Everett area to be able to go to Everett Station and be able to buy the monthly bus pass. So this will be effective if approved today. This will be effective for October bus passes. So again, I recommend a motion to approve the agreement with Everett Transit.
I'll move to approve bus sales pass agreement between Island Transit and Everett Transit for sale monthly passes effective September 1st, 2016.
Oh, you just said October. You said October.
Well,
The agreement will be effective September, that'll allow us to sell.
Yeah.
Sell it on Everett.
As soon as I said it, I realized it.
I'll second it.
Mr. Hanold made the motion to approve the actions to sell the bus pass sales agreement between Island Transit and Everett Transit, second by Mr. Allen. Any further discussion?
Can you talk me through the financial impact of the 5% fee that we would pay to Everett? So that $4 per ride, does that affect our reimbursement from the state? Does that come out of our budget? What's the impact of that, and how do we adjust for it?
So very little impact to us, because the bottom line is any fares that we collect are deducted from the reimbursement that we would get from the state. So in this case, where we would, had we sold the bus pass at the Camino, we would receive $80, that would be deducted for our reimbursement from the state. In this case, we'll only see 76, so $76 would be deducted from our reimbursement from the state.
So they don't charge us that full $84 gets worked out on the Everett side?
They collect $80 from the customer, and
Yeah.
we receive 76 from them.
And then that's what's deducted from our grant?
Correct.
I think it's, you'll see, I think it'll help the ridership. It'll be more convenient for people that just have a passport. And just go up.
And for Island Transit, it's just an invoicing transaction for us. We're not actually collecting the money and sorting it out or any kind of stuff. It's a smooth way for us to do it on that. Any other comments? That motion?
I did.
We already did.
Motion and seconded.
We are going to go into.
We haven't
We have to
voted
vote
yet.
on.
Jeez,
We got you all confused, don't we?
I'm thinking
I
about the
made the
details and I'm
motion.
forgetting about the process. All right, we have a motion on the table. Mr. Hanold made the motion. Mr. Allen seconded the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Apologize for that.
That's okay.
Pay attention to the process. as we go through. At this time, we're going to go into a closed session regarding collective bargaining. And I think we'll just have the meeting right here. Is that what you want to do? And so we'll excuse everybody who is not involved on the board during this closed session. And we need how much time?
No more than 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
20.
How many, Matt suggested
20 minutes.
Yes.
And there'll be no action afterwards.
There'll be no action afterwards.
On these, did they respond to people?
So at the beginning, it said public comment would be allowed for each agenda item, or you weren't allowed to comment.
But they can go on the website.
Sorry, you're not walking.
Be on the website, say, hey, we got your comment, we addressed
Well,
it.
I came up with a 6-year plan, but
Thanks, Paul.
like that, in good shape. It actually is in very good shape. I was comparing it with a year ago, and it's very similar. It's
If
just
you were
better.
on the itinerary, you were on one.
So things are in good shape.
Did they do a?
Plans.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Please refer to the beginning of the meeting where the chairman stated that public comment was allowed in the beginning, but we would be allowed to comment at each agenda item. And we were denied the ability to comment on any of them as per the attorney. Enjoy.
You said there's a